Welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so just to give a bit of context, this fireside will explore, well, first of all, this fireside is entitled Proximity and Advantage Unlocking Belize's Nearshore Investment Potential. And we will explore how Belize can deepen its integration into regional value chains by improving logistics corridors, modernizing ports of entry, and aligning trade policies with international best practices. Panelists will share their insights on bilateral opportunities with Guatemala, Mexico, and CARICOM, such as coordinated customs operations, joint export promotion, and cross-border infrastructure projects that can boost competitiveness for Belizean goods. Ultimately, in business, efficiency is key. And getting goods to port and goods to market, efficiently is what it's going to take, right? So a central theme of this year's Belize Investment Summit is, of course, Belize's geographic position as a nexus, as a connector, as a bridge. And we're very much at the heart of our region, and that I have no doubt, in saying that it opens up so many opportunities for Belize. We've heard for such a long time that Belize has a lot of potential in promoting trade and enabling trade across this region from one sub-region to the next. But we've been talking about that potential for a very long time, perhaps too long, right? And so I'm joined by these esteemed panel members who represent the three major markets that Belize can actually tap into. Mexico is a behemoth, right? It's just such a huge market. And as we've heard this morning, we don't trade enough with Mexico. Guatemala, our neighbor to the west, is also significant. And there's a lot of trade that's happening already. I think things have improved, in some respects in terms of infrastructure. But there's still, the final mile, literally, right? That's needed. And of course, CARICOM, we're a member of CARICOM, and we should be trading more with ourselves, right? And so we're very much looking forward to the perspectives of these of Belize's representatives to these countries and blocs. And so with that, what are we seeing? The first question is, what are you seeing on the ground by way of interest, when it comes to investment, when it comes to trade opportunities? What's trending right now? What are the investors that you meet saying about Belize in terms of what does Belize have to offer them? Ambassador Alpuche?
Thank you very much, Ishmael. I believe, before I get into that, I think we need to look at the perspective that we have on Central America. We've been a member, and in a few months' time, we'll celebrate 25 years of being in SICA, but we have not so far yet joined CIECA, which is the Economic Integration process. Last year, we finally put in a request for observer status in CIECA. But what government has been doing, has been pursuing, is to look sort of beyond Guatemala. In the CIECA process, there's a group of 3 countries called the Northern Triangle, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, that has been undergoing a process called the Integración Profunda, which is a little deeper integration, accelerating a bit more what the rest of CIECA is doing. We have strategically been inserting ourselves into that. We already have the PSA with Guatemala. That's being renegotiated, but there's still a lot of residual work to do in terms of border facilitation. We've also advanced negotiations with El Salvador, and that is progressing well. Next, we would have Honduras. So that would place us in a position where we're able to market within Guatemala, but also beyond Guatemala into the Northern Triangle. Keep in mind that 90% of the trade in Central America travels by land. We only have a land border with Guatemala. So Guatemala is key in our access into the rest of Central America, into successful market penetration in Central America. Now, coming down to the specific question of interest, quite frankly, the interest from Guatemalan investment is limitless. The agreement signed with Santander this morning is an example. Here's a Guatemalan company that invested in production of sugarcane and production of electricity, now going up the value chain to refining. We have much investments in the tourism sector, and also too in the services sector. So there's quite a bit in every sector. There's logistics, there's banking, there's a number of areas where interests have been expressed by Guatemalan investments. I believe our private sector really need to step up to the plate, and I will say it that way, in partnering with Guatemalan and Central American investments. These are huge markets, literally next door. From the border in Belize, you're 10 hours, 12 hours into a market of 3 million in Guatemala City, and almost the same time into El Salvador, etc. So the market is real. But we need the private sector to join us in penetrating the market. But I believe to a large extent that market penetration would be easier attained if we speak of partnerships. I've been saying for 10 years now that the perfect slaughtering plant for cattle here would be 60% Belizean ownership, 20% Guatemalan ownership, and 20% Mexican. And I can assure you, if that would occur, we would stop moving live animals and start moving the higher end product fairly easily.
And a direction that we should certainly be, aiming for in Belize, to be able to get more in the hands of the Belizean producer.
Definitely, we need to utilize the trade agreements that we have better. There's this concept of cumulation, utilizing rules of origin. So if we produce milk here in Belize, for example, there's a certain limit of milk we could import from another source, process it, combine it here, and export to CARICOM. We have something that Guatemala wants, which is access to the CARICOM market. We need to do it together with them. And I think our private sector has to be less shy and be a little bit more aggressive in beginning to combine and utilizing the trade rules to our benefit. We're exporting a lot of raw products into Central America, a lot of it formally, much more informally, and then we're importing it in finished product. We need to reverse that, and that reversal could be done to a large extent by joint venturing here in Belize. One last thing I want to add, government is doing quite a lot of work to open logistics. We know that the transportation element of trade in goods is important in Central America. We've been working at liberalizing procedures at the western border, the Benqueviejo-Melchor border. That border has limitations, so we've been actively pursuing the opening of a new crossing at the further south, at the Santa Cruz de las Fronteras on the Guatemalan side, and Jalacte area in Belize. All of us know there's quite a robust trade happening in there. We now need to formalize it, because that would open much more than goods trade. That would open tourism and so much more to the 3 countries that we're targeting in the Northern Triangle. Equally too, I know there's discussions with the Port of Big Creek and the Port of Santo Tomas in Izabal to look at complementarity more so than competition. Look, the possibilities are endless, and I could go on here for a long time.
I particularly appreciate the emphasis on the importance of partnership and that getting together. right? Becoming familiar and teaming up. We can get back to that, perhaps in the context of joint infrastructure projects, because I think that's an area where we can realize efficiencies for the public sector side of investment, right? Ambassador Arnold, your perspective from Mexico in terms of interest and the context.
So just to give a little bit of perspective, the closest 4 states to our border on the Mexican side, Quintana Roo, Yucatan, Campeche, Chiapas, we're looking at a market of about 11 million people at an area that receives about 30 million tourists per year. So the consumption, the appetite for goods and services is there. Over the past 4 years, I've seen quite a few interests from the Mexicans. This morning we know that there's a Mexican group that is bringing the 4 seasons. In tourism, there is quite a bit of interest to partnering with Belizeans. I've seen it in pharmaceuticals. Even prior to the agreement that we had to sell cattle to Mexico, Belizean cattle was finding its way through the informal channels to Mexico, because one of the main reasons is that our cattle, our breed, our genetics does better in Mexico than the genetics that they have. So we've really improved our genetics. What we've been doing quite a bit of groundwork with the federal government as well as state government. We have a working group from the governor's office in Quintana Roo and a working group on our side where we're at the point that we can pair business to business, people who have interest in light manufacturing to produce furniture, to produce electrical components, and even for car parts, but they want to set up in the free zone. And we were discussing earlier that the trick, or what we see the key would be, is these partnerships, not just a Belizean company trying to penetrate either the Guatemalan market or the Mexican market. But if you partner with someone that already knows the lay of the land, that already knows the rules, the restriction, how the economic game is played, then it's much easier to penetrate that market. And I believe Ambassador Canton will allude to that a little bit later. We just got the nod from the president herself that they will now look at the importation of coconut, the entire nut from Belize, in the near future. A guarantee was also given that whatever market that Belize wants to access in Mexico, and we must understand, to them, we don't pose a threat. Everything that we can produce, Mexico can buy, and it won't disrupt any economic activity that they have. It might drive up demand here in Belize. So it is something that we would have to look at whatever we're producing, if there's a surplus, and then we can offload that to the Mexican markets. But the interest is there. We have, like I said, a group of Mexican businessmen and investors in different areas that we are now looking at to pair with Belizean businesses who are interested to either set up light manufacturing in the free zone or continue with any sort of agricultural exports to the Mexican market.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think just your mention of the free zone, at the border between Belize and Mexico represents such a huge opportunity, especially if we're talking about linking to CARICOM and servicing the Mexican market. I particularly like what you mentioned about the quality of what exists here in Belize. And I think it not only exists in livestock, but across many sectors. And that's a topic that I think I would really like to dive deeper when it comes to us believing in Belizean products, right? Ambassador Canton, how many people are in CARICOM? And what does CARICOM represent for us?
That's a good question. Thanks for having me here. But my first thing is just became ambassador. I am private sector, so if I get caught betwixt and between, please forgive me, because I tend to look at things a little differently, having been very active in trying to make this thing work. Listening to Jose speak, and he and I have worked together for 20, 25 years also on these same issues. I think that where we are today, and I was saying it to both Ambassador Arnold and Ambassador Puche, is we as a people are afraid to do business with Central America and Mexico. We're not afraid with the Caribbean as much, but the Caribbean has a lot more regulations and a lot more stipulations and a lot more difficulties because you have to ship by sea. You can't just go there, and shipping is a serious issue because going to Guatemala, it jams up, then a container to Barbados is 3 weeks, a container to Guyana is 4 weeks, and that sort of stuff. But to piggyback a little bit on what Ambassador Puche said and what Ambassador Arnold says, my experience that I'm having is that once as a Belizean, we realize that what we have to offer is something different. It's like listening to Mr. Adam Stewart speak about his sandals thing. We Belize have to look at what we're producing in Belize. We have to look at what we produce similarly. One, there are only 400,000 of us. Two, the production that we have is not that great. Our supply chain is fairly small. But what we do have is we have the ability to take that supply chain and convert it into something of a much greater value. What I mean is that if you go cold chain and keep it natural, you don't find that as much in Mexico or in Central America or even in the Caribbean, although in the Caribbean it's a little bit more accepted. However, if they force you to go to aseptic and that sort of stuff, UHT, and packaging in this and shelf stable and stuff like that, you can't compete because their volumes of their supply chain is just not that. And to give you an example that we're experiencing right now, is like with coconut water. So Mr. Trump drops tariffs on Mexico and everybody else. Coconut water coming from Asia. When Trump did that, what China did was China opened their borders to coconut water. So most of Malaysia, Thailand, the Philippines and stuff, coconut water is going to China now because China is a huge consumer of coconut water. So what is happening is Mexico is importing coconut water from the Asia, but that coconut water from Asia now is 40 to 46, 48% more expensive than what they used to have. So the next people in line is us. However, what we have to offer is not volume. What we have to offer is quality. And therefore, the conversation has to be how to make that marriage. Mexico uses old coconut. The coconut I use to make coconut oil, they use that coconut water, UHT it, and that's what they pack. I don't know if you all can drink it. I can't. If there's any Mexicans here, I'm sorry. Okay? I am used to Silvera's Farms fresh coconut water, and that's what I'm spoiled with. However, that's what Mexico wants also. So what Mexico wants from us is not that coconut water. I'm sending a container out shortly. But they want 50% fresh coconut water, which is an 8-9-month-old coconut water, mixed with the old coconut water. We're trying to reach to a price point. So what are we doing? We're giving them a product that will enhance their UHT packed product in Colima. How does that work? Through a partnership type relation thing. It's not, when you talk partnerships in business, it's legal. So it's not really a partnership. It's an agreement that you put together that says this is what my responsibilities are, this is what your responsibilities are, we're going to figure out the cost, and this is what we're going to ship. This is how much you're going to ship, et cetera, et cetera. But it's an agreement, and it's an agreement that's binding. So what I will do is I will price it, and I put it to the border, you take it from the border to Colima, and from there, you're good. We've never spoken to that before. I didn't come to Ambassador Arnold yet. I just called him, I said, look, be aware. I might need your help. But what we're going to do is we're going to push it, and we're going to test it. Because there are truckers that will go from Sand Creek to the border, and then you put a Mexican trucker, and that trucker will take it to Colima. Everybody says, oh, cartel. Fine. Those guys are prepared for that. In fact, the trucking system probably comes out of the cartel system. That's not my business. My business is that I get paid in the price that I want to get paid when it's put at the border, and it's gone. Guys, it's the same thing, and ladies, it's the same thing in CARICOM and the other Central American countries. We've been to Guatemala, and in Guatemala, once you get into Guatemala, you're good to go in the rest of Central America. In CARICOM, what we've done is we've partnered with CARICOM people, and they help us to deliver it into our market. Do we go in there with our brand? No. To brand, you need 20% more money to brand. So I will co-pack with my product, which is a high-value product. It's their brand, so they then take up that thing. And they distribute it, like I'm into Jamaica, big time into Jamaica. They're putting it into Cayman, they're putting it into Barbados, and stuff like that. And that, to me, is how trade in CARICOM, trade in Guatemala, trade in Mexico will have to be. It's, yes, government has a responsibility, which is regulatory, and that's important. But we as the people and even government needs to assist in how we actually put this product into these markets. I'll say this to you. These markets are prepared for us. These markets do want a Western supply chain. They do not want to go across the ocean, and they are now willing to pay us a price for the little bit of product that we can provide. They'd want 50 containers of coconut water. If I can only send 2, they'll accept it. If I can send 10, they'll be happier. So for me, it is not to blame government. It's, in my mind now, where I sit, and what I would like to do is to try and figure out how to establish the relationships where we can do exactly what Ambassador Papuche says, and Ambassador Arnold, form relationships to which we can push trade. And trade, government, helps us to push that trade. But not for us to rely on government. You know, I might go to the minister and say, Minister, I want to put my product in Jamaica, help me. No, it's not his job. It's my job to do that. And I think that whole concept has to change. Guys, these folks that surround us are no better than, no different than. And like Mr. Stewart says, we have to be proud of who we are, recognize what we have, and go out there and just do it.
Very good. I think there was a lot of betwixt and between there. Betwixt and between. Thank you. Much needed. You mentioned, you know, the role of government, and on that point, in the context of CARICOM, are there any policy recommendation, like adjustments to policies that you would recommend in order to move more into CARICOM?
Yes, I think that the regulators in Belize, I need to be careful how I say this, but actually I don't really care, I'm over 60. You can't do me nothing over 60. I think the regulators need to understand what their jobs are, and that their jobs is not to slow down, speed up, or do anything. Their job is just to regulate, just to assist us, facilitate us, enable us to do what we need to do. And therefore, if there's a certificate that we need from any regulatory body, that they don't worry about whether the other party will accept it or not. Just issue us, as long as I am certified by you, and we have all kinds of certifications, as long as we are certified, then just sign off and let that be my problem at the border, my broker's problem at the border, not you to say to me, but I don't know if Seneca will accept it, or I don't know if the other one will accept it. That's not your business as a regulator. Let me worry it. If I am willing to gamble my money, allow me to gamble my money. So I think government, and I don't think we've really and truly sat down to speak to it, to clearly define what private sector has to do versus what government has to do. I think private sector has been spoiled, and soul being spoiled, being hurt, because private sector has not taken on their responsibilities. They have not taken on all their responsibilities, and therefore depend on government to accommodate some of the issues that are not government's business. Or at least I don't want them in my business.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
I think the pivot and the direction that the present administration is taking to try to use technology so that a lot of these application processes is online, making the information available at a one-stop shop will also help with what we're doing. Because many times you will find businesses say, but I'm getting the same information and I have to send it out to 4 or 5 different entities just to get a certification and to get a go-ahead. And it's time-consuming, too much red tape, the bureaucracy, and it slows down the entire process. So I think the pivot and the direction that we're going there will help. We're better off than where we were 10 years ago, but we're still not there as yet.
Got it. So, Ambassador Arnold, back on the point of believing in ourselves. You know, I've sat in trade negotiations, and beforehand, you know, when we're Team Belize, you know, preparing, there is a fear. You know, there's a fear to face, especially the Mexicans, you know, the Mexican negotiators. You, being based there, from your perspective, what is it that we have to do to jump this hurdle, the fear of the unknown or the fear of, you know, not believing in our capabilities?
I believe, Ambassador said it earlier, that we're all the same, we're all human beings. The recent experience with the signing at the trilateral tripartite cultural corridor, biodiversity corridor, the Mexicans had an entourage of people there. The Guatemalans maybe had 7 or 8, and we had about 10. But we're all sitting down, negotiating, talking, and wanting to reach the same goals. What we found is when we push back, it's not because you're being insubordinate, but you're trying to fight for your position. We have a small unit, we have a small staff at the embassy, at the mission in Mexico. But we've found that we've gotten a lot done, and we've earned a lot of respect from the policymakers, where if we send 1, if we send 2, if we send 10 people to these meetings, they understand that we speak for the entire country of Belize. And so we're at that level now. The game has changed. Mexico is also pivoting and looking southwards to try to make sure nearshoring is the sexy topic for them now. And so they're looking for more socios, they're looking for more partners in commerce and in industry. And we've always enjoyed a great relationship with the Mexicans. And so almost by default, and I apologize if I mash anyone's toes, but if they can do business with us or with a Guatemalan, they will come to Belize first.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And Ambassador Alpuche, back on that point about partnerships, you know, and the co-creation, the collaboration on infrastructure for accessing the Central American markets. You know, any thoughts there in terms of what you've seen and what we need to do?
A little comment first on the fear of negotiations. And I have to go back to an old trade mantra that says that no deal is better than a bad deal. So you will sit, you will negotiate. If it's good, you go. If it's not good, then you back away and you go back another day. And I think that's the persistence that we need from the private sector, working in collaboration with government to achieve market penetration. We have market access into Guatemala under the current PSA for what, about 15 years now? But the market penetration is relatively small. And we need to switch that. As I said earlier, the government has been working a lot on the border facilitation issues, and both at the macro level in terms of new crossings, but also at the implementation level at the existing border crossing. We have a pending inward visit from the Guatemalan private sector to Belize, and I think we need to actually, Mr. President, we're having that discussion tomorrow. We need to explore. We need to literally just get out there and start talking and start see where these partnerships would occur. The quality that we're producing here, and this was a bit of an eye-opener to me, the quality that we produce here in Belize, in Guatemala City, we could, at retail value, actually be on par. So while we think that we're producing something expensive here, based on the quality that we're producing, I'm certain it could move fairly easily in the market. We always use Marie Sharp, but Marie Sharp is in Walmart and in many restaurants in Guatemala City. Hot Mama is now doing a bit into Guatemala. And there's an absorptive capacity in that market that's just phenomenal. I think that would grow exponentially if we would look at deeper business-to-business partnership.
Thank you so very much. So I think that concludes, what I got out of it is, the importance of, yes, Dr. Kennedy, sure, one more story.
I just want to make one statement on the CARICOM issue. And I think that all of us that are doing business or want to do business in the CARICOM has to realize that there's a clock that's ticking, and that clock is called Guyana. I mentioned Suriname, and everybody says, don't worry about Suriname. But Suriname also has big oil reserves, and what they're going to be producing in Guyana and Suriname won't be a whole lot. They'll be importing a lot. But Guyana is now pushing a road straight into Brazil, almost there. And we are good Jamaicans in regards to Rastafari and, blessing pork and turning it into chicken and eating it. All that stuff's going to come from Brazil, and it's going to come into Guyana. The Chinese are there. No offense to Chinese, you're good. But what's going to happen is all of a sudden we're going to have this attack from the south. And it's going to eat up Trinidad, and it's going to have more difficulty coming into Jamaica, because Jamaicans have a different, like Mr. Adams said, But we got to be careful, because it's happening, and it's happening really, really fast. Brazil is citrus, Brazil is sugar, Brazil is everything. And we have to understand that. So we have a challenge now, especially within the CARICOM market, on making sure that we try to get there quickly, as quickly as possible.
Thank you so much. So yes, a changing global trade landscape is upon us. It represents both opportunities as well as things to be wary of and to be prepared for. And these perspectives, I think, have been extremely valuable on the topic of unlocking Belize's potential at last. Thank you so much. Round of applause, please.